I want your attention, everything.
I've got to get back to the castle. They'll want me in the kitchen.
But you watch now. You like this.
Merlin, I swallowed a bug. Archimedes, help!
When people talk about the golden era of hand-drawn animation, one film that quietly stands out for its warmth, humor, and philosophical depth is The Sword in the Stone, the 1963 animated feature that reimagines the early life of one of Britain's most legendary monarchs. Released by Walt Disney Productions and directed by Wolfgang Reitherman, the film adapts material from The Sword in the Stone by T.H. White, transforming a literary retelling of Arthurian myth into an animated coming-of-age story filled with magic, mischief, and meaningful lessons. Rather than beginning with a triumphant king pulling a sword from an anvil before a cheering crowd, this film invites us into a much more intimate and human story, the story of a skinny, awkward boy named Arthur, nicknamed Wart, who has no idea that destiny is waiting for him. Set in medieval England during a time of uncertainty after the death of a king, the land is left without a ruler. The famous sword lodged in stone appears with a prophecy carved beneath it, declaring that whoever can pull the sword free will be the rightful king of England. Yet the film does not focus on this grand political tension right away. Instead, it centers on Wart, an orphaned boy living as a squire under the stern care of Sir Ector. Wart's world is not one of royal privilege, it is a world of chores, training, and constant reminders of his lowly status. He is overshadowed by Sir Ector's son, Kay, who is being trained to become a knight. Wart's life appears mapped out for him. He will grow up to serve, not to lead. The emotional core of the film begins to form when Wart meets Merlin, the eccentric, bearded wizard who lives in a ramshackle cottage in the forest. Voiced with theatrical charm by Carl Swenson, Merlin is not the traditional solemn wizard cloaked in mystery. He is quirky, absent-minded at times, yet deeply wise. He claims to live backward in time, frequently referencing events and inventions from centuries in the future, which creates some of the film's most delightful comedic moments. Merlin sees something in Wart that no one else does: potential. Not just the potential to be king, but the potential to become a thoughtful, educated, and compassionate human being. Merlin's philosophy of education shapes the structure of the story. Instead of preparing Wart through swordplay or physical training alone, Merlin believes that knowledge is power. He insists that brains are more important than brawn. This theme runs throughout the film, as Wart is taken on a series of magical lessons, each designed to teach him a different aspect of survival, empathy, and courage. The transformations that Merlin casts are not random tricks of magic. They are carefully chosen experiences meant to broaden Wart's perspective. One of the earliest lessons transforms Wart into a fish, plunging him into the underwater world of a moat. Here, he learns about strategy and the importance of thinking before acting. The sequence is playful, yet tense, especially when Wart encounters a larger predatory fish. It is not strength that saves him, but cleverness. The message is clear. A ruler must be able to outthink danger, not merely overpower it. The fluid animation and aquatic choreography reflect the studio's technical confidence during this era, using expressive character movement to drive both comedy and suspense. Another transformation turns Wart into a squirrel, introducing a gentler, more emotionally layered lesson. As a squirrel, Wart experiences affection when a female squirrel falls in love with him, unaware that he is human. This storyline, surprisingly tender for a light-hearted animated film, subtly introduces themes of love, identity, and heartbreak. When Wart must return to human form, the squirrel is left confused and saddened, unable to understand why he has changed. It is a bittersweet moment that adds emotional texture to the narrative. Wart learns that actions have consequences and that relationships carry responsibility. The film does not linger in melancholy, but it allows enough space for viewers to feel the complexity of growing up. Perhaps the most iconic lesson comes when Merlin transforms himself and Wart into birds, leading to a high-flying duel of wits with the formidable sorceress Madam Mim. This sequence becomes a full-scale magical showdown filled with rapid-fire transformations as Merlin and Mim change shapes in an escalating battle. Madam Mim, chaotic and rule-breaking, represents power without discipline. Merlin, on the other hand, follows structure and intelligence. The duel ends not with brute force, but with clever application of knowledge, reinforcing the film's central thesis: intelligence and education are the ultimate strengths. The animation here bursts with imagination, demonstrating how the creative team could stretch the boundaries of visual storytelling while maintaining character-driven humor. The screenplay, shaped in part by Bill Peet, condenses T.H. White's broader narrative into a streamlined, character-focused arc. Instead of presenting a sprawling epic, the film zeroes in on the formative experiences that shape Arthur's moral compass. The writing balances wit with wisdom, often using Merlin's anachronistic comments to connect medieval settings with modern sensibilities. These time-jumping jokes, references to electricity, airplanes, or contemporary ideas, serve as both comedic relief and subtle commentary on progress and innovation. Meanwhile, Wart's life at the castle continues to ground the story. Sir Ector's practical mindset and Kay's arrogance contrast sharply with Merlin's idealistic worldview. Kay, voiced by Ricky Sorensen, embodies pride without substance. He trains physically but lacks humility and curiosity. His character functions as a foil to Wart, highlighting how kindness and open-mindedness can be greater virtues than entitlement. Sebastian Cabot's narration and voice work, particularly as Sir Ector, lends warmth and theatrical gravitas to the medieval setting, giving the domestic scenes a lively, almost storybook quality. The pacing of the film feels episodic, structured around lessons rather than a traditional rising action toward the sword's revelation. Yet, this structure mirrors childhood itself. Growth does not happen in one grand event. It happens in moments: lessons learned, mistakes made, insights gained. By the time the sword re-enters the foreground of the narrative, the audience understands that Wart has already been forged into something extraordinary, even if he does not yet realize it. The climactic moment arrives almost accidentally. During a tournament in London, Kay forgets his sword, and Wart runs to retrieve one. Finding none available, he stumbles upon the sword in the stone, and without fanfare or expectation, pulls it free. There is no swelling speech, no triumphant declaration beforehand. The act is simple and unassuming, which is precisely the point. True leadership, the film suggests, does not arise from ambition or brute strength, but from humility and preparedness. Wart pulls the sword not because he seeks power, but because he is trying to help someone else. When the truth becomes undeniable and Wart is revealed as the rightful king, the transformation is both literal and symbolic. The awkward boy becomes King Arthur, yet he remains the same compassionate, thoughtful individual shaped by Merlin's teachings. The film closes on a note of optimism, suggesting that the future of England rests in wise and caring hands. Merlin's reappearance, arriving from the future with modern vacation attire, reinforces the light-hearted tone, even as the story concludes on a grand historical note. Artistically, the film represents a transitional period for Disney animation. It carries forward the expressive character animation and fairy tale sensibilities of earlier classics, while experimenting with a looser, more sketch-like visual style. The line work feels more visible, the designs slightly more stylized, giving the film a storybook aesthetic that complements its medieval setting. The music, though not as heavily emphasized as in some earlier musicals, supports the narrative with playful songs and whimsical orchestration. Over time, The Sword in the Stone has earned a special place within the Disney canon. While it may not be as frequently discussed as some of the studio's larger epics, it resonates because of its thematic clarity. It argues that education matters. It celebrates curiosity. It insists that leadership is rooted in empathy and understanding rather than domination. In an era when animated films often focused on romance or a spectacle, this story dared to center intellectual growth as its driving force. The legacy of the film also ties into the broader Arthurian mythos, a body of legend that has been reinterpreted countless times across literature and cinema. By focusing on Arthur's childhood rather than his reign, the film humanizes a figure often wrapped in legend. It suggests that greatness is not born fully formed, but cultivated through guidance and experience. Merlin's mentorship becomes the emotional backbone of the story, illustrating the transformative power of a teacher who believes in a student's potential. Even decades after its release, the film continues to charm audiences with its blend of humor and heart. The character animation remains expressive and lively, the dialogue sharp and memorable. Children can enjoy the magical antics and animal transformations, while adults can appreciate the philosophical undertones woven throughout the narrative. The simplicity of the story allows its themes to endure, proving that sometimes the most powerful tales are the ones told with clarity and sincerity. Ultimately, The Sword in the Stone stands as a meditation on destiny shaped by character. Arthur does not become king because he is the strongest or the loudest. He becomes king because he has learned to think, to care, and to act selflessly. Under Wolfgang Reitherman's direction, and through the creative efforts of writers and voice actors who brought warmth and wit to every frame, the film delivers a timeless message wrapped in medieval magic. It reminds us that wisdom can come from the most unexpected teachers, that greatness can begin in obscurity, and that sometimes the smallest, most overlooked boy in the room may be destined to change the course of history.